Welcome to Flattening the Curve, a podcast to disability advocates. Here, we knock down barriers, one story at a time. I'm your host, John Couchy. Let us begin. Before we get started today, I want to give a warm welcome to our returning as well as new listeners. As I know, it has been a while since our last episode. So I guess you can call this season 2, a reboot, a relaunch, whatever you want to call it. I want you all to know that we are back and we are going to be better than ever. Like I said, we are excited and hope you are too. As we go further into disability stories, where we are going to continue to highlight individual disability stories. We're going to highlight the work done in our community towards inclusion. And we're even going to touch on some disability issues our community faces every day. If you have any stories or individuals that you want to see featured on this podcast, please do not hesitate to reach out because we want your stories told. Our guest today needs no introduction, at least for those familiar with our organization. As I swear, whenever I'm out in the community and mention that I work with disability advocates, the first response I get is, "Oh, I know Dave." So allow me to introduce Executive Director of Disability Advocates, Dave Bulkowski. How are you doing today, Dave?
I'm doing well, John. Yourself?
Oh, not too bad. We're recording this in the middle of a whole lot of white stuff, so
yeah, hopefully people are listening and seeing green or experiencing the green of spring.
Here's hoping. Now, Dave, as mentioned, you're kind of the face of the organization when it comes to the community, and it's well-deserved, as you've been here for a solid minute.
Absolutely.
How many years now?
Well, actually, I will hit my 30th anniversary on February 6th, for those keeping score at home.
Oh, congratulations. That's quite the achievement. Guess my first real question is, what got you started on this journey working with people with disabilities?
Quite honestly, to say it's one of those cool accidents of life. One of my best friends, and still one of my best friends, his wife uses a wheelchair from a snowmobile accident 35 years or so ago now. And he called me on a Monday morning. I was looking for work. Had just got out of law school and said, yeah, this place called, at that time, the Grand Rapids Center for Independent Living. They're looking for a disability rights coordinator, and they wanted somebody with a business or law background, and you should apply. And I didn't even see the ad in the press the day before. That was back in the old days, 1994, in the fall, and this thing called the internet. I don't think Al Gore had invented it yet, or he was in process of inventing it. So it was all printed and totally missed it. And had Paul not called me, I would not have applied. So, I mean, that's how it got started. And I keep learning that disability's been part of my life, but we never called it disability. It was just, as I like to say, it was mom and grandpa. It wasn't person with occipital cerebral pituitary atrophy and a stroke survivor with hypertension. We said mom and grandpa. But anyways, yeah.
Here at Disability Advocates, our mission is that we work alongside people as they seek to lead self-directed lives. Now, you are a part of creating that mission statement. What does that mission statement mean to you?
Well, the bottom line, it means that I think we finally got it right. Being here 30 years, I think that's the 4th or 5th rendition. And I know we did that in 2017 because I keep that file on my desktop. And what it means is again, we work alongside people with disabilities. We don't do for, we don't do with. I mean, if anybody has had the opportunity to work on a mission statement, you argue prepositions and verbs and all that rot. As I noted, I've spent time in law school. I have degrees in philosophy and theology, so I got plenty of degrees in words. And so again, it took us a long time to get it right, where if you as the person with a disability that we're working alongside, you have stuff to do, we have stuff to do. And if you don't do your part, our stuff is going to be meaningless. To me, a great example is the stuff that you have championed, John, our mock interviews. To say you've ramped it up, pun intended, that working with those students, they're doing tons of work, and we see it and we experience it. And the employers that come in and do their part are doing work, and our work, bringing folks together, and the deeper work with our workforce development team, helping those students get ready and then work on lessons learned. Everyone's got a part, but the person that we're working with or the community, if they're not working alongside us, we just have to stop. And again, you've experienced that, working alongside people like, yeah, I'm going to do that, and they don't. And that's the frustrating part. At the same time, the joy of when people get into it.
But I think the analogy of you teach a person how to fish, they'll feed themselves for their lives versus just handing them the fish.
Absolutely. And then, of course, every once in a while when we look at systems change, we talk about, then we want folks to, how do they get ownership in the pond, as opposed to just needing permission to fish in somebody else's pond. So getting further engaged in the community.
Now, Disability Advocates is part of a network. There's about 15 or so centers for independent living, depending on how you slice it here in Michigan, 407-ish across the U.S. But what can you tell our audience about Centers for Independent Living and their history?
Well, first and foremost, as already noted, we were the Grand Rapids Center for Independent Living, and Center for Independent Living continues to be our legal title within, or to say our legislative title, both within federal law and state law.
Now, let me clarify, when we say Center for Independent Living, we are not a nursing facility.
Correct. That's
a common misconception.
Yes, and that's why we changed our name. Because nursing homes had better marketing budgets and still do, and they literally stole our name. It's generic enough. It's like people say Kleenex when they mean tissue paper. Mm-hmm. But Centers for Independent Living, there are 15 in Michigan. There are a couple that share a board, but 15, that's how the feds count us. That's how the state counts us. That's how our funding formula works, and our state and federal core funding is distributed. And so, but the history goes back, and of course, I'm sure people of my age, which is around 60, they will have seen plenty of memes, that when I say this was started in 1969, it's 1970 in Berkeley, California, and we started in 1981. That's only 10 years later, which was nothing, but it seemed like the history that was lived between 1970 and 1981 was huge. And the first, and they still call themselves, they're never changed their name.
They're the Center for
Independent Living in Berkeley, California, doing great stuff still. And it literally was people with disabilities coming together, saying, there's the civil rights movement, there's the women's rights movement. We as folks with disabilities are being discriminated against and not given that level playing field. And so that's how we started.
Yeah, I always love telling stories about Ed Roberts, who is the one who founded the Center for Independent Living at Berkeley. I'm not gonna lie, I feel a little dirty saying "the" like that, I'm saying a school from south of the border that I
will go nameless.
Yeah. But Ed Roberts was an individual who contracted polio at a young age, attended Berkeley University with the aid of an iron lung, and started up a lot of advocacy movements with a group known as the Rolling Quads.
Yep. Yeah, and to me that just proves both the initial power as well as the continuing power of our secret sauce, which is peer support. If Ed said, I'm just going to do this, it probably would have lasted 6 months. Instead, Ed found other guys and a few gals. Of course, this was still the late 60s, so colleges was predominantly guys. However, they came together, and folks who were wheelchair users, folks with vision loss, some folks with hearing loss came together and created this thing to how do we work alongside each other, and how do we change the systems? Because some of the fun stories of Berkeley is they went out in the middle of the night and made concrete and poured a curb ramp. It wasn't a curb cut, it was a curb ramp. They did that, and of course Berkeley brags up how accessible they are now, but it took people to actually pour concrete in the middle of the night, doing some good guerrilla action.
Yep, and it was their work going around flattening curbs that inspired the name for this very podcast.
Awesome.
Yep. Now, 1981 is when Disability Advocates, then known as the Grand Rapids Center for Independent Living, but in that 40 plus years serving our community, Disability Advocates has grown significantly and done a lot of great work. So I got a two-part question for you, Dave.
Yep.
Looking back retrospectively, what was one thing in particular that stands out of a major achievement or moment in this organization?
Well,
I know it's difficult to say one thing,
but to say that my very first day, February 6th, 1995, there was a meeting with, at that time, our transit authority was called GRATA, Grand Rapids Area Transit Authority. And the meeting was following up on a lawsuit that was settled for guys who were wheelchair users here in Grand Rapids and Wyoming and Kentwood. That's where they lived. They sued GRATA for their lack of ADA compliance. And the federal judge said, the law says you have to do A, B, and C. Did you, GRATA? And they said no. And the judge said, do it. And, the guys made a couple of dollars, like literally a couple of dollars to repair a damaged wheelchair.
Well, in 1994, the ADA was only being enforced for about a year at that point.
2 years for transit. Okay. 92, they had to come. But it was scheduling stuff and what have you. And some of the people at the Rapid don't enjoy me reminding folks of this, but 1994, when the lawsuit was filed, I believe that was the true turning point for transit in our community, because that was the first time in a long time somebody took transit serious enough that they would take its quality to federal court, and they won because of the ADA. But that's when people started getting serious, and again, I can tell you all kinds of stories. But this April 11th, so April 11th, 2025 is the 25th anniversary of the first successful millage of the Rapid, which, people would point to that as, the ability, that's when we had evening service added, just a lot more frequency. So the Rapid took off, and in the year 2000. That being said, I do believe those roots were in 94 and organizing that people with disabilities have done. So that's a long answer to say that one piece. And we're still fighting to expand public transportation today.
Yeah, but I mean, that's definitely like an origin to the ripple in the pond that has grown into massive waves for advocacy for transportation here in our community. In a future episode, we're going to talk to our community organizer, Mike Williams, about Unstoppable Kent, which is continuing that mission for advocating for public transit and transportation in our community. So, I mean, it's a great ripple point that has had significant impact. So on the flip side of that question, what's something you see in the future for disability advocates?
I see, one of our true strengths, and I can give you all kinds of funny slash sad stories about how we failed. But our true strength is when we bring the community together. The public transportation stuff was so many other organizations that worked with us. Our goal or our job was as an organizer. Our upcoming Disability Awareness Day works because we have 20, 30 other disability organizations that participate. And so as we continue to bring folks together, I see huge opportunities in the school to work arena. Again, building on those mock interviews, or actually, without, is this being recorded? To share, we are talking with folks. Don't want too many secrets to get out about, like, instead of mock interviews, let's do some real interviews.
Yep. The job fair going
Exactly.
specifically geared towards bringing employers who are eager to hire individuals with disabilities, have specific jobs in mind, or open jobs, and just looking for a different perspective candidate.
Well, and back to working alongside, it's making work for you in your day job of working with getting more employers who are eager. Because too many employers see disability, especially folks with cognitive impairments, and they're like, "Ooh, that person doesn't have any skills." And then we experience it here at our campus. We see employers literally their eyes open up and are like, "Oh my gosh, these young people have mad wicked skills, and we could hire them to do A, B, and C," and working with other partners to help, again, bridge those gaps. And so huge opportunities.
It's the skill set that they have that's not seen, but I also think one of the most prevalent things that gets seen is the passion that they have and the eagerness to work, and that real drive to have that opportunity.
Absolutely. Just, people, they love being engaged. They love working. It's making it happen. And we got tons of stories, tons of opportunities. And so, and really on the edge of that impact. And it's not us as disability advocates, it's us with our community partners, including those employers.
So I'm going to add one other thing. You mentioned our campus, and you mentioned collaboration with other disability organizations. For those not familiar with our organization, Dave, where are we housed?
We are part of the Unified Sports and Inclusion Campus of Special Olympics Michigan. For those that know the Grand Rapids area or follow high school sports, this used to be South Christian High School. They built a new building a couple miles down the road, and Special Olympics purchased this 4 years ago now. Probably, no, it was.
I know, time flies.
Just before COVID. And so it was 2019. So is that already 6 years ago?
Closing.
Almost 6 years, yeah. And our claim to fame is we were the first phone call that Tim Heilman, who's the Special Olympics Michigan director, made, and said, "Hey, have you guys have any interest in this?" And we actually started talking about a co-location in 1998, and I have the documents to prove that. But it took somebody with enough courage and foolhardiness as Tim to actually buy a 127,000 square foot building in a few fields and start inviting other people together. So, I mean, we moved in almost 3 years ago. On May 2nd, we started operations here, May 2nd of 2022. So, 3-year anniversary of being here is fast approaching, but Down Syndrome Association of West Michigan, Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services, Be Nice, Autism Support Kent, Thresholds, MOCA, Autism Alliance of Michigan, Community Living Services.
And Thresholds?
Yeah, Thresholds, Special Olympics, of course. And then there's a couple of groups that we actually sublet space to, and we're talking to others. Because if people were talking about it way before COVID, but COVID really gave us a fast lesson in it. What does, co-location, remote work, collaborative spaces, what can those things look like? And so we have extra space, and as I like to tell people, we didn't pay for it. It was this awesome list of donors. So we just have to share, and we do. And so yeah, I mean, it's a great, it's just a great collaborative space. To me, the best example is um, my area of most interest is public policy and community organizing, and it's the world's tough out there if you're trying to have Medicaid funded services, and we'll see what happens with the new Congress and the new administration on that front. That'll be an episode or two, I hope, down the road. But that being said, I've just learned so much because of our neighbor Threshold, and gotten to know Jackie Johnson, who's their executive director, way more because we can just see each other in the hallway and talk about stuff, and just the absolute crisis and beyond crisis with direct care workers. The reimbursement is way too low, and people don't get enough cash. That's why they can't afford to do the work. And COVID also taught us, it's like, wait a minute, I can stay at home with my kids and actually save money instead of working for minimum wage, taking care of somebody else. It's just, yeah, COVID broke some things that were held together with duct tape.
Yep.
And crazy glue.
But we have this great collaborative space with a large group of other disability organizations, all with their own individual specialties,
Correct.
All offering a multitude of different programs, and all that we will try to get on this podcast in the future to tell their individual stories.
Awesome.
But let's talk a little bit about what Disability Advocates has to offer and highlight a few of the services that are under our roof.
Cool.
If you don't mind, I would actually want to start with our information and referral team. They are the team who field hundreds of calls every month, connecting any and all to the resources that they need. We know that when you're in need of a resource, the internet can be a difficult place to search. You can feel turned upside down, but our information referral team is here to field those calls and get you to where you need to be, whether it be a service that we offer in-house or somewhere in our many community partners. They're here to connect you to the resources you need.
Yeah, and then that's really part of that team as well is basic independent living supports, which also includes benefits planning and housing navigation. So it's one thing to simply refer folks to a waiting list in housing. How do we, again, work alongside folks that are looking for accessible and affordable housing? So we have that and benefits as well. That I just was telling somebody the story recently that an extremely well-intended social worker in town helped a family get $40 more in benefit A, and they lost $100 in benefit C. I mean, these things all are a house of cards, and you just have to know how they play against each other. And our team is masterful at that.
And multiple certified benefits specialists
Yep.
who can navigate those services, dare I say, sometimes better than the people who provide those benefits.
Dare say it. And so definitely reach out because, and there's ways to get off benefits. We actually help people leave benefits, and there's great off ramps, just like the highway. Great off ramps. And if you miss the off ramp, it gets ugly fast. So if you got questions, and then so it's like INRs become these, what our technical title is an independent living plan, but that's basically what are your goals, and then what are we going to do, what are you going to do, and working together.
Another great service, one near and dear to my heart, is our youth transition services, where we have specialists that work with individuals between the ages of 14 and 20 to 26, working on specific skills relevant to those individuals, coming at it from a peer mentality, looking at those skills from school to work, from living at home to living on their own, or transitioning to post-secondary education, really acquiring the skills that they need to succeed.
Awesome stuff. And then Also, like in that individual supports arena, our home accessibility services, no exaggeration, they have a national reputation for quality. We just finished an extremely successful grant from HUD. It was helping rural seniors. That being said, what the service is focused on is we have occupational therapists who do home assessments and identify the barriers in your house. You're fine. You are who you are. It's your house who has a disability, and so we want to help get rid of that disability in your house. And then we have certified occupational therapy assistants who follow up on those recommendations and help people get equipment. And if the stars align, mainly the funding stars, helping people get ramps and bathroom modifications. So it's just a awesome service. And then related to that is our home accessibility center. We have builders who come in, architects. Tomorrow we have an interior design class from Western Michigan University.
Go Broncos.
I figured you would put that in there, John, as a proud alum.
I'm still used to saying row the boat, though.
All right.
But we legally cannot say that at Western anymore.
Oh, okay, so don't say that. I didn't hear you. And so that being said, their professor brings the students here who work with a real live person with a disability who's building his home, and these interior designers really understanding what inclusive design and aging in place really means. And it's beautiful. This is not going to look like a hospital. It's going to look like a gorgeous home that happens to have awesome ability.
In the past, we interviewed one of those Western interior design professors and had an amazing story that I highly recommend you go back and listen to. But continuing with that occupational therapy team, we have an equipment loan closet. So for any of those who have old adaptive equipment that is sitting around gathering dust, we take that equipment in, we clean it up, give the old spit shine, and we recycle it back into that community. So instead of that tool developing dust and aiding nobody, it can be out in that community giving somebody else back their freedom and independence.
Another thing that we do that is unique is ADA employment advocacy, that we work alongside people who believe they are being discriminated against in either the hiring or employment processes. And because most of the cases aren't going to be on the news and they're not going to be $1 million settlement, it's just trying to help somebody. Again, we're kind of a neutral-ish convener with the employer. How do we, the ADA calls for an active dialogue to find the best accommodation to meet the needs and keep that person employed. And so that's what we work to do. And again, if it's $1 million lawsuit, there's plenty of attorneys who will take that. These more small things without huge potential damages. It's just us and some partnership with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights.
Now, we could sit here for hours telling you all the services that we have at Disability Advocates. I'm just going to run down some quick cliff notes. We have family support services that help families who are taking care of an individual family member with a disability, making sure that they have the tools that they need to succeed and navigating that wicked web of benefits and services. We have a community organizer who works on advocacy at the state and local levels, making sure that disability issues are at the forefront of the floor. We have an accessibility review specialist in our Absolutely Accessible Kent initiative, which, Dave, if you want to talk a little bit about that one.
Well, I mean, that has just been positively ramping up more and more and more. It's working with architects and builders and developers. We have contracts with, and we've reviewed the amphitheater, the Acrisure Amphitheater that is, a new signature project downtown Grand Rapids, the Amway Soccer Stadium. Both of those we reviewed and impacted the design. The teams at Progressive are excellent, And both times their team said, thank you for making our designs even better. And so Jackson Botsford, who's our accessibility consultant, is truly second to none. And so just adding that. And then, of course, the really cool part is not only Jackson, we had a couple of our test pilots who are volunteers with different kinds of disabilities. That with the soccer stadium, it was somebody who has the means, and he in his power wheelchair went last year to the Rose Bowl when that little university in Ann Arbor was in a national championship semifinal game and experienced the inaccessibility of a 120-year-old stadium. So he had great insight how to make it better. And so again, it's bringing real world experience connecting with the design community. So shameless plug, May 28th, Absolutely Accessible Kent, 7th annual. And the keynote speaker is going to talk about neurodiversity and design, because the ADA says nothing. The ADA accessibility guidelines says nothing about neurodiversity. So it's about being at the cutting edge.
Now, and as we aim to do, we will have an episode talking about Absolutely Accessible Kent as we get closer.
And a commercial or two.
Yes.
Let's work some commercials in.
Yep. Just put that shameless plug out there, as Dave likes to say, for any organization listening to this podcast. If you want to hear words about your organization and a brief ad read, all you have to do is reach out to us, and we are more than happy to work something out. Tons of services all under this roof. We did not hit them all, but you know what? Throughout this podcast, we are going to aim to do so. Dave, you are a busy man. I don't want to take up all your time, and we really appreciate the time that you are able to spend with us today. Before you head out, is there anything else you want to leave our audience with?
The biggest piece is gratitude. First and foremost, the gratitude of the folks with disabilities who started us, 40 plus years ago, the people with disabilities who continue to lead us. Our board is majority people with disabilities, and our board is also majority people of color. That leading from that perspective, our staff is majority people with disabilities, and of course, the people we work alongside are mainly, or they're people with disabilities or family members with folks with disabilities. So having that honor and humility that people have invited us to be part of their lives, be it an individual small issue or a huge thing like a 12,000 seat national level amphitheater.
Well, and with that, we say tune in next time on Flattening the Curb, where we will sit down with Disability Advocate's own Michael Williams and another local advocate to discuss the amazing initiative you two can join that they call Unstoppable Kent. Once again, this has been John Couchy with Flattening the Curb, a podcast brought to you by Disability Advocates. For more information on our organization, engage with us on social media and visit our website at dakc.us. Like and subscribe, hit that notification bell to be alerted when our next episode drops. And remember, you can't have inclusion without accessibility. So let's build a more inclusive world, one story at a time.